Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Harvesting Justice podcast, a pro-life San Francisco production. I'm your host, Melanie Salazar, the executive director, and I'm joined with Tommy Kearns, and we're going to be talking about his daughter, Clementine, and his search for his daughter's body to bring her justice. So welcome, Tommy. Thank you for joining us today.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. I'm really looking forward
Yay.
to it. I just wanted to say thank you before we get into it. Thank you for everything that you do personally. I see you traveling all over the place. All of your activism is not unseen, and I definitely think that people should be taking notes because you're doing an awesome job.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I just try to stay in my lane, show my life in my little corner of the interwebs, and hoping that inspires some people along the way. Okay, so Tommy, I know you online from all your work that you're doing for your daughter. So I know you as this pro-life activist dad, this Wolverine who's gonna get justice. But maybe tell us some little fun facts about you to get to know you a little more outside of the pro-life Tommy Kearns.
Sure. I used to travel a lot. I've been to probably 15 countries. I think 11 of those countries was in the course of like a 6-month period. I was by myself and just bounced around all over the place.
Just backpacking the world, living like a gypsy.
Yeah, like in hotels type of gypsy. I don't do too much traveling anymore, unless it's like activism and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Been to Japan and Egypt and Italy,
Oh,
Thailand, and a bunch of different countries.
wow.
I like to cook. Uh, Again, antiquing is something that I enjoy. I like Goodwill. Goodwill's awesome.
Nice.
But yeah, then I like photography. I like food.
Oh.
So with traveling, it's kind of like I can do a little bit of everything that I enjoy. I can antique in different countries. So kind of
Mm,
just like to explore. I like history. I like old things.
that's cool. Glad we get to know you a little more as Tommy the Man. Tommy the Man, the myth, the legend. So I would like to hear from you about the story of your daughter Clementine. Of course, I know the story since I've been following along on social media, but um, not everyone knows the story. So when you're ready, we'd love to
Absolutely.
hear from you.
Clementine is very, very loved by her entire family. Mother loves her. Very big to stop the experiments and hopefully give our daughter a funeral. Throughout this entire process, I've never stopped loving her. We're a team. So Clementine was conceived from so much love between me and her mom. There were so many memories. We traveled all over the place, like a short amount of time. Trips to Boston, Maine, all over New York City. Before
Oh, very
Clementine was with
cool.
us. Then Clementine was a surprise, and she was with us on a few of our trips. We did a road trip from Jersey to Florida. It was an amazing life that she had every single day since that. And some days were sad and confusing. Overall, Clementine lived, and Clementine was her own person with her own memories. Through this process, I've done a lot of research on fetal development and just different studies that they've done with just how the baby reacts to the outside world. Babies can
Mm.
hear sound at 16 weeks. Babies respond to, the tastes of foods through the amniotic fluid. So they actually pick up preferences, like food preferences from fetal development. Getting used to the sounds of a barking dog or the sound of a vacuum
Mm.
cleaner. There's a whole entire life that the baby lives while inside the mother. That
Yeah.
connection, that bond between a mother and child, even down to the emotions that, the mother feels, the baby feels. So it's not the same interactions with the outside world, obviously, but we can even get a sneak peek with babies that are premature, babies in the NIC unit. We have
Mhm.
babies that are 24, 25 weeks. We have babies that are 30 weeks premature. And all of these babies, whether they're 22 weeks, 30 weeks, 8 weeks, they're alive and they are developing. And with every week and with every month, they are alive. So Clementine's life, though short, was special and was unique. Clementine was her own little person, and ultimately, she's not with us anymore. To fast forward, Clementine at 5 months wound up at the Cherry Hill Women's Center because of a phone call that her mother regrets. Her mother was confused. She was not in the right mental mindset with not only societal pressures, with an unplanned pregnancy and not being financially stable, not having things that a planned pregnancy would consist of. Though she had support, sometimes you feel hopeless. And with that hopelessness, trying to turn to people for help, to look for answers. Again, she made a phone call that she regrets. During that phone call, she spoke with the equivalent of a salesman to take a side note to explain the Cherry Hill Women's Center. In 1983, there was a court case. I believe it was called Finley versus the Cherry Hill Women's Center. This court case happened because the Cherry Hill Women's Center was using a third-party billing agency. Now, their suspicion and their fear was because they were using a third-party billing agency, there might have been a financial incentive to push these appointments. They had went to court, there was a settlement agreement, a slap on the wrist. But for over 4 decades, they continued the same scheme. Now, to go back to present day, the person that she was on the phone with was the equivalent of a salesman, not a therapist or a doctor like she thought she was speaking to. She had expressed her mental state. Again, she was in mental crisis. To give just less details, she was in mental crisis. She expressed this to them. They explained to her that it was normal and that they could help. She didn't know if abortion was legal at 5 months. They expressed to her that it was legal. And that's all it was just manipulation. And they took advantage of her fear and they took advantage of the entire situation. Because as they reiterated, are you ready to schedule your appointment? Are you ready to schedule your appointment? She expressed she did not have money. So she had no money and they offered her funding. Now, they never said that funding was donation or fetal research experiments or fetal organ harvesting or anything like this. When she went on the first day, they told her that they were going to take care of her regardless and to come in. She goes in on the first day. She's given all of this paperwork without any type of oversight, nothing. To mention, she is also under the influence of marijuana. She had smoked, she was impaired, she was in this office, and she just went through the paperwork, just signing, not reading anything, not knowing what was happening, thinking that this is just like an appointment. I truly don't even think she knew what was going to happen that day. They completely left her in the dark with everything. When she had went and spoke with the nurse, the nurse's name is Kamala DeBrooks Allen, RN, the registered nurse. Nothing was explained to her. They went through a list of questions off the computer. One of those questions had to do with her social history. They had asked, have you used any narcotics or drugs within the last 3 months? She said yes. They said when? This is on the medical document. And it says, yes, marijuana, March 12th. Kamala DeBrooks Allen signed off on this. A medical professional, registered nurse, signed off knowing that her patient was under the influence of drugs. On the first day, there were certain consent forms given. The consent form for the abortion procedure. Now, there's all fine print, all little things, patient rights, the fact that it's a student training and volunteer facility, which again, wasn't disclosed, wasn't explained. It was just really quick, sign here, sign here. Now, having the medical documents that we had to fight for 2 months, but I'll get to that. But having these documents now, understanding what's on these documents, there's a lot of things that don't make sense. The abortion consent form is completely void because she was under the influence of marijuana. You cannot consent to something while under the influence of drugs. That's number one. Number two, there's a consent form with a list of medications on the first day this was given. And it's misoprostol, Pitocin. There's a section for C-section. That's left blank. Okay, well, that makes sense. They're not doing that. But then there's digoxin, and that's left blank. Now, for anybody who doesn't know, digoxin is the chemical that they use to induce fetal demise. This stops the baby's heart. It puts a baby into the equivalent of a heart attack. It takes 4 to 8 hours for that baby to subside to this chemical. It clogs the arteries. Now, they didn't use digoxin on the first day. They didn't use this chemical. They didn't induce fetal demise, and that's another fact that's on the medical documents that we have. Just to pause to explain the difference between, again, this was a second trimester abortion.
And
Okay.
remind me, you said Cherry Hill Women's
Cherry Hill Women's
Clinic.
Center. And
Where is this located?
this is in Cherry Hill, New Jersey, the Cherry Hill
Oh, in
Women's
New Jersey. And I was just curious what state this is happening in
New
for there
Jersey.
to be a late abortion cutoff. Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, New Jersey. This was at Cherry Hill, New Jersey. So to explain the difference between a second trimester abortion and fetal research procedure, basically during a second trimester abortion, it's a 2-day procedure. On the first day, they induce fetal demise and they dilate the cervix. On the second day, the baby has already succumbed and passed away. The baby is then dismembered with different abortion tools. They use forceps or sulfur clamps to dismember the baby limb by limb. They crush the skull. They use other tools, ileus, potentially a speculum, a suction cannula, and a curette. For fetal research, it's different. Still a 2-day procedure. On day one, they skip inducing fetal demise to purposely keep that baby alive. Like regular organ donation, person,
Yeah, I took my organ donor off my driver's license once I learned
everybody
that.
really should because it's not just transplantation for sick people. It's not. There's other things that procurement agencies do with people's body, and that's an entirely different conversation for
Yeah.
a podcast, I guess.
So take off your organ donation
Yeah. But
on your driver's license, people.
because like organ donation, you have to be alive. You have to still be alive
Mm-hmm.
enough. Your organs and tissues need to be viable for transplantation into the host or even, to be put on ice to be transferred to wherever they're shipping it, whatever's harvested. It's the same idea with fetal organ harvesting. The baby needs to be alive. The organs and tissues need to be viable. So on the first day for fetal organ harvesting, this 2-day procedure, what they do is they skip inducing fetal demise and they excessively dilate the cervix with physical dilators. On the second day, the baby is still alive and they excessively medicate the mother with misoprostol
Mm-hmm.
to start contractions. They can also use Pitocin, which is used for two separate things, either to induce labor or to prevent hemorrhage. The baby is born alive because of the excessive dilation and because the baby is kept alive. The baby is delivered alive, struggling to breathe, and they are cut open from the top of their chest to the bottom of their stomach.
Oh, you said they're cut open. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh.
Their chest
Poor
is
babies.
completely just ripped open. The organs are just cut out. They sometimes cut through the baby's face to get to the brain matter.
Oh my
And
God.
it's depending on what's being purchased. Different procurement agencies, they have different requests, different quotas for amounts of organs, but it's pretty much whatever they want. It could be the baby's eyes. It could be the baby's skin. It could be the baby's bone marrow. It could be the baby's organs, whether it's lungs or kidneys or thymus, intestines, everything. Hearts, brain.
It sounds so dystopian, right? I can't believe it's happening and it's
And it's
happening every day.
it's not just happening in America. This is happening around the world. We have the consent form that took Clementine's body, and it states that she could have been sent to research centers, hospitals, universities, for-profit companies, not only nationally, but also internationally. So to think if in America, the NIH and the FDA approves studies and gives out millions of dollars of grants, taxpayer dollars, for grotesque experiments. So you said dystopian. At Pittsburgh University, they have taken the scalps of babies, born alive and harvested, and transplanted them onto the backs of live rodents. They have done skin transplants onto rats as a host to keep these children's scalps alive and growing. These scalps scab over and hair continues to grow. In Michigan University, I believe, and don't quote me on this, I don't remember which university, but
Mm-hmm.
they've transplanted fetal hearts into pigs. And there's
Oh
just
my
so many
goodness.
other, it's a xenotransplantation, it's called. They've humanized animal organs, either mice or what have you. There's just so many different experiments. Organoids, they take a sample of the baby's brain and they grow it in a petri dish. It's called a human organoid, and they've connected it to artificial intelligence. Some studies connected it to RC cars that drive around by themselves. But it doesn't just stop with abortion. They've even miscarried babies. I've seen a study out of the Middle East that they did a curiosity study that submerged a 14-week baby boy and a 20-week baby girl in honey to practice or to experiment with natural embalming, which we already know throughout history. With Alexander the Great, his body was delivered in honey. Not too popular in Egypt, but they did mess around with natural embalming with honey. So we already know that this is possible. We already know that this is a thing. So why we have to test this? Again, it's a curiosity study. It's not necessary and it's
Mm-hmm.
unethical. Majority of these experiments are unethical and they don't work. They've done regenerative medicine studies where they break the spines of rodents and they inject these stem cells to try to repair the injuries that they've already inflicted on these animals. Just studies that usually don't work. Yeah, they try to spin it politically that, oh, they're trying to cure cancer and AIDS and this and this
Yeah.
and this, but
There's a good for society.
it's not that simple. I mean, sure, maybe, but at the end of the day, I don't think that it's really necessary to use children that were cut open alive and tormented in their last seconds of life to try to cure a disease. It doesn't seem ethical to me, nor has it worked. There
Good.
hasn't even been a single breakthrough since we've been experimenting on children. This is something
Mm-hmm.
that it goes back to the 1950s and the 1960s. I know
Mm-hmm.
of the HEK293 cell lines and the WI38 stem cell lines. This is a baby from Holland and a baby from
Mm-hmm.
Sweden. In the second trimester, two little girls that were born alive and harvested. Today, their stem cells are still being used. Now, the HEK293 stem cell line, this stands for human embryonic kidney 293.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I can get into the history on so many different children. It's too, this is a baby that comes out of China. There are so
Mm.
many children that have been lost and forgotten. There are so many children till today that are still being just tormented, and it is disgusting and it is wrong.
Your point on the fetal stem lines,
Yes.
there's a great video, if folks don't already know about it, from the pro-life organization, I believe from Canada, called
Yes.
Choice for Two. And there's this great video from this campaign called It's Okay that really humanizes the children that were harvested for modern day vaccines. So definitely want to encourage everyone to
It
take a
truly is.
moment to
It's an
look it
amazing,
up.
yeah.
Again, it's called It's Okay, by the Canadian pro-life organization Voice for Two, the number four, the number two. I never had given it much thought about fetal stem lines and vaccines, but after I saw this video, I thought, okay, I'm not okay with this. It's
This
wrong. It's always
video,
wrong.
when I first saw this video, it brought to life everything that I had imagined in
Mhm.
my mind when thinking about Clementine. Reading
Mhm.
these medical documents and just diving down the rabbit hole of fetal organ harvesting and fetal tissue
Mhm.
experiments brings to light the reality of what's happening
Yeah.
to a lot of children. But to go back to Clementine, on the first day of the procedure, everything was very rushed. Being under the influence, having the doctors know that she was under the influence, not caring, allowing her to sign consent forms for the abortion procedure, that's illegal and that's not consent. They still had not brought up donation. They still had not explained anything of skipping fetal demise. They still did not mention birthing Clementine. They explained nothing. On the first day, on the medical documents, it states fetal cardiac activity, yes. On the medical documents, it states fetal demise induced by, not administered. They premeditatedly and intentionally skipped inducing fetal demise because that is what fetal research protocol stands for. That's what they have to do. It's necessary. Baby needs to be alive so that the
Mhm.
organs and tissues are viable. but nothing was explained to Clementine's mother. On the first day, on the medical documents, it said that she took this part of the procedure well, but that's a lie. Just another piece of evidence of improper documentation that the Cherry Hill Women's Center is already very known for doing. Clementine's mother, we have her written testimony. She was screaming on top of her lungs while they were
Oh my
dilating her.
God,
On
so
the medical
sorry.
document, it states that they could have used anesthesia to dilate her cervix, but this facility looked at Clementine not as a baby, they looked at her as a specimen. And they didn't look at Clementine's mother as a person or a patient. They looked at her as a subject, knowing that they viewed our daughter as a specimen or a product. If they would have used anesthesia or a paracervical block to numb the cervix while they were dilating her, it would have poisoned Clementine potentially, and they wouldn't have been able to use her for experiments. So they dilated her cervix again at the time of the procedure. She's 4 foot 11, 105, 110 pounds during the pregnancy. She's
She's tiny.
small frame, and they used 5 Dilapan S dilators on her. She had never had any type of cervical dilation, not naturally. She's never been pregnant. She's never even had a pap smear, let alone
Oh.
Dilapan S, which is again the equivalent of a matchstick, but it swells to be the size of a glue stick. They used 5 Dilapan S dilators on her. She was screaming on top of her lungs. It was two women. And on these medical documents, there's names for every person involved, with everybody down to somebody who gave her ibuprofen. So why isn't there any names for the people that were dilating her cervix as she was screaming in pain? Why is that not listed on the medical documents? Instead, it states that she took the procedure well, when in reality she was screaming, "It hurts, it hurts." And they reassured her, "Oh, there's only a few more." They explained to her, if these fall out, do not try to put them back in because it's dangerous. That you need to come back to us. They gave her a pill that we now know is to prevent infection. They went home for one last night together. Clementine was still alive. She came back the second day. They gave her 600 micrograms of misoprostol. Now, Planned Parenthood, their dosage, they claim that 400 to 800 micrograms, that's normal. But you can't just dose any patient the same. That's not how it works. You have to look at their medical history. You have to look at their size, their height, their weight, their age. There was no reason to give her 600 micrograms of misoprostol. Misoprostol is used to start contraction. Now, why would they give her an excessive amount after already giving her an excessive amount of physical dilation? To go back to what a D&E procedure would consisted of, one or two Dilapan-S dilators would have been to dismember a baby. You have to use forceps or Sofer clamps to dismember that baby. You don't need that large of dilation. You don't need excessive dilation. It would be adequate enough. The baby's head at 20 weeks is about the circumference of a lemon. So during a dismemberment abortion, they crush the baby's skull into pieces, and it's enough to remove from less dilated cervix. For fetal research, they need excessive dilation so that they can birth these children in one piece.
Oh my gosh.
Now, she knew nothing that was happening still on the second day. No mention of donation, no explanation of what was going on or what was being given to her, how much was being given to her, just the pain. She thought she was dying. Natural contractions take about, 14, 20 hours sometimes, right? And it's painful. Can you imagine in the course of like an hour and 30 minutes, 0 to 100 contractions in an hour and 30 minutes?
Oh my gosh.
The amount of pain that she was in, I've told some women and they cringe. It's something I will never understand. But this isn't just some statistic. This is my family. This is the woman that I love. And this is our child that I love. So when I think about this and when I think about her screaming in pain or her thinking that she was dying, it's disgusting.
Yeah. That's terrifying.
They were monitoring her contractions. They kept on coming up to her, asking her pain levels. They let her know to, when she gets to over 10, to let them know. When she said that it was over 10, they started wheeling her to the operating room. She was apprehended, stopped before the door by a woman that she had not seen before, who had a clipboard and a piece of paper. Now, on this piece of paper was the consent form for fetal research donation. This was not explained to her. This donation consent form was given to her while she was in active labor.
This is crazy.
You cannot be in mental or physical distress and consent to anything, especially a medical document. You cannot be in mental or physical distress and consent to a medical document. Furthermore, this consent form for fetal donation for fetal tissue experiments was given to her on the second day. That is not consent. They had changed abortion procedure, premeditated, skipping inducing fetal demise to keep our daughter alive, excessively dilating her cervix with mechanical dilation. This is premeditated.
Yeah.
Procedure had already begun. Why would they give her a consent form on something that they already started without her consent? Makes no sense. The last thing that makes this consent form completely void is the fact that there's no date on this consent form. Like many other things, whether it's a check or any other piece of legal documentation, a consent form needs to have a date. The fact that there's no date on the consent form, it's completely void. Human rights were violated. Clementine's mother's human rights were completely violated. But this is more than just medical malpractice. This is more than just medical negligence. This was a murder. Similar to the Kermit Gosnell case. And for whoever is not familiar with Kermit Gosnell, he is an evil man that was arrested. In 2010, he killed Kanamaya Munger. On top of this, he killed over 50 children that were born alive and had the backs of their necks snipped with surgical scissors. Now, these 50 plus babies that were found during a raid, only I think 5 of them made it to court. Babies A, B, C, D, and I believe E.
Yeah.
And out of these 5 children, only 3 of them got justice. Now, all of these other babies, they were kept in freezers, they were left out to rot. So, whether rigor mortis or whether freezer burn, they weren't able to have proper autopsies. But the 3 babies that were able to have proper autopsies, one baby had a whistleblower speak out that she heard this baby crying. In a garbage can, she took a picture of this child because she said it was big enough to be somebody's nephew. These babies, these 3 children that were born alive and killed after birth by this abortionist, got justice. Kermit Gosnell is in prison and he cannot hurt any more women and he could not kill any other children. What they did to Clementine wasn't just one doctor, it was a trainee. This trainee, which there was no consent for a trainee to perform this abortion. In the fine print of the patient rights document, it states that this is a volunteer and a trainee facility. But unless you squint really hard, the Complex Family Planning Fellowship is where this trainee came from.
I just want to share, for those unfamiliar with the story of Kermit Gosnell, there's a great movie called Gosnell, The Trial of America's Biggest Serial Killer. So you can go to gosnellmovie.com. And if you want to see the picture of the baby boy that Tommy just referenced, they have a way that you can view baby boy A, the different babies. We're not given names other than just letters. And so if you want to view that, that victim, baby boy A, there's the picture through the gosnellmovie.com/baby boy.
There's
So
another
just wanted to share
baby
that.
girl that she has a lesion on the back of her neck from the surgical scissors. People argue about a baby in the womb, whether it's a fetus or a zygote or a clump of
Pump of
cells.
cells, parasite.
But there is no argument that any baby, whether premature or fully determined, any baby that is born alive is an infant, is a person.
Yeah.
So, referring back to what I said about NICU babies and how we can see a baby that's 20 weeks, 23 weeks, 30 weeks responding to loud machines or what have you, they're responding to the outside world. They're alive. And we can see them. Any child that is born alive has a protection, has human rights, no different than anybody else. Now, for safeguards, we have some Supreme Court rulings. We have some laws. Now, in 2003 and 2004, there are 2 different laws that I would like to bring up. Born alive, infant protection ban. I actually have the laws right here, matter of fact. I'm going to list off a few different laws that were broken here.
Yeah.
All right, so federal
Give it
laws.
to us.
Again, we have 42 U.S. Code 289G2 Prohibition of valuable consideration for fetal tissue. The Born Alive Infants Protection Act of 2002. I'm going to break that down really quick. The Born Alive Infant Protection Act of 2002. So now this is a law from 23 years ago that should have protected my daughter, but didn't. Federal Food and Drug Cosmetic Act, Human Tissue Research. On the consent form, it does bring up the transplantation of the fetal remains of our child. HIPAA Privacy Rule 45 CFR. Number Code, Federal Ethical Standards Codes for Research. Fetal Farming Prohibition Act of 2006.
Fetal farming.
Yeah, that's a big one. That should have protected my daughter. But it didn't. Then we have in I think it was 2003 the partial birth abortion ban. That could have protected my daughter. It didn't. I believe in 2016, and this is off my head, in 2016, Mike Pence passed a law, and it was something along the lines of the Dignity of Fetal Remains, I think it's called, or Fetal Remains Dignity Act, or something along the lines of that. But, there's so many different laws that should have protected the mother of my child and our daughter. Now, in New Jersey, any premature baby born 20 weeks and beyond needs to have a birth certificate. Even stillborns and miscarriages 20 weeks and beyond need to have death certificates. Now, this happened in New Jersey. There was no death certificate, there was no birth certificate. Clementine wasn't given a social security number or anything of the sort. Instead, she was born alive. Her arms and legs probably moving just from the change in temperature. They took a scalpel and they pierced through her. While she was struggling to breathe, while she was fighting to live, they cut her open. Pathologists, the anesthesiologist, the sonogram tech, the circulating nurse, the trainee, and the main doctor, Richard Lebec. It took a lot of people to kill my daughter, and they did. And I pray that she didn't suffer. But at 20 weeks along, what she went through, no person should go through. There is no doubt in my mind that we will be able to find her, that we will be able to stop the experiments on her, and that if we can retrieve any of her remains, even if it's the smallest stem cell of her, that we can give her a funeral, the respect, the dignity, and the honor that she deserves. Clementine is a person. Clementine is an angel, and the things that they are doing to her are just so terrible. And some people that truly do care about Clementine, that love Clementine, and I'm hopeful. We do have a plan of action that we are starting, and I'm hopeful, really, really hopeful. But Clementine is not alone. There are so many other children that are being experimented on from decades ago that are still being humiliated and exploited for financial greed and for the medical achievements or the advancements of mankind, when in reality it is just unethical and barbaric and just not working. We need to have a law that is stronger than the laws that should have protected my daughter and all of these other children. Justice for Clementine is saving her, stopping the experiments, and giving her dignity again. And justice for Clementine is also saving all of the other children that are being experimented on. So with Clementine's law, we will be able to save these children and just stop this from continuing.
Thank you, Tommy, so much for sharing the story of Clementine. And again, I just want to share my deepest condolences. It really breaks my heart, especially as a mom. I remember being 5 months along in pregnancy. I remember around that time I was starting to feel my son kick and move, and I'm really sorry. And I appreciate you describing the procedures and fetal organ harvesting in so much detail, because people just don't know that this is happening, and it's happening every day. I mentioned that it's so dystopian, and I pray that one day this will all be a thing of the past, that one day we'll look back and people will be thankful for people like you who stood up and said something, and people will be in such disgust that this was ever happening. So Tommy, tell us, how can we get involved in the fight for Clementine? Give us some call to action. What can we do?
So, the first thing I recommend people do is just please educate yourself. The NIH.gov is a great place to start to understand that yes, this really is happening. A lot of people think that this is not happening, but it is, and it's happening right now. The NIH has a list of different types of experiments, whether it's, again, Pittsburgh University with the humanized animal organs and the fetal skin transplantation onto mice. You can look up all of the different types of experiments. That would be another great way to start, is to look up types of experiments that are being done, not just, again, vaccine development, but all of the types of experiments. Another great way to get involved with educating yourself is to go to the Center for Medical Progress. David Daleiden is somebody that blew the whistle on what was happening with Planned Parenthood, fetal organ harvesting, procurement agencies like Advanced Bioscience Resources, which, by the way, Advanced Bioscience Resources is the company that purchased my daughter, Clementine.
Yes, and they are based in the Bay Area
Yes.
where we are.
So now
We
another
are
thing
we
is
are friends with a group of pro-lifers who go pray outside of ABR every other Saturday.
So now the thing is with Advanced Bioscience Resources, this company is owned by Linda Tracy, but she is now switching over to Circle Allocation Services. This is the consent form that was involved with purchasing and taking Clementine. So she is switching from Advanced Bioscience Resources to Circle Allocation Services. Two different procurement agencies, same owner. David Daleiden at Center for Medical Progress, he explains everything in great detail. Again, undercover videos of these people that sell babies' body parts and buy baby body parts. Another great way to just educate yourself is look at some of the politicians that are already speaking out against this. Contact some of these legislative people in your state. Ask questions. See if there are procurement agencies in your state. Ask more questions on what is happening in your state, or if there is an abortion clinic that you're already praying outside of, or if you're already doing activism. Try to find out if there's more going on. I think that a lot of people will be surprised when they start to fall down this rabbit hole, how relevant this is in the pro-life movement and in the topic of abortion. I truly think that fetal organ harvesting and fetal research experiments are the legs of abortion. If you follow the breadcrumbs, the trail of money, it really truly leads to these experiments. This is a billion-trillion-dollar industry that has been going on for decades, and very, very few people know about it. Procurement agencies and bioethics companies, and again, the deeper you fall down this rabbit hole, the more you educate yourself, the more you will want to do to try to stop this. And that's the next thing, is to get involved. I am just a father who loves their family, no different than any other man or any other woman who cares about their family. I'm not special. Anybody can get involved. Anybody can use their voice. I love the First Amendment. And everything, as long as it's done out of love and as long as it's peaceful, to get involved is so easy. To know your rights and to know that your voice is important, and that if there is injustice, if you can help somebody, you can be the difference. So to encourage people to get involved, whether it be sidewalk counseling or just being a good friend, if there's a person in crisis, or if there's somebody that is going through an unplanned pregnancy, true support is love. And to not just brush them away and say you support them with whatever decision they make, it's a cop out. People need to care about what is happening, and it starts with you. You know, what will you do to make a difference? When it comes to Clementine specifically, if everyone can please help in prayer. Without Jesus Christ, I cannot express this enough. Without Jesus Christ, I don't know what I would do. Through prayer and through faith and through trusting the Lord, I know for a fact that He'll guide us to it. So if everybody could just help with prayer, if everybody can even write to politicians that are already speaking out against fetal organ harvesting and fetal tissue experiments, if they can express that we need to save Clementine, we need to stop the fetal research experiments, if they can bring up that we are trying to pass a law to save all of the children from fetal tissue experiments, That is another big thing that they can do. I know for a fact, and Donald Trump, it was March 25th, was just asked about this. With the topic of defunding Planned Parenthood, they had asked him, are you going to look into fetal organ harvesting and go after the people involved criminally? And he said, oh, it's a touchy subject. It's a hot topic of debate or whatever he said. But he said, we're going to look into it. And he said it 3 times. We're going to look into it. We're going to look into it. I am praying that he looks into it because I do have faith in the president. I do think that Donald Trump is a good man. I do think that he has a heart, and I know for a fact that with his faith in God and the fact, for a fact that he will care about Clementine, and I'm just praying that if he can help save her, we can save all of the other children as well.
Tell us a little bit more about Clementine's law. What is the process to get that enacted, and what would the law entail?
So with Clementine's law, the idea that I have, and I have a draft written up. So to give just a brief summary, in my mind, if we can make it so that no child is exploited, no child is purchased, no child is sold, no child is experimented on for financial gain or curiosity studies or what have you. We make this illegal from all of the children decades ago till present day. We stop the experiments, a cease and desist. We give them an ethical and proper send out. We give them the respect that they deserve.
Yes.
And we never do this again. Clementine's law will make it so that any child born will not be harvested. That from conception, hopefully, depending on how we can word this, depending on how we can, get this in motion, I would like from conception for every child to have the same rights as any person that is alive. These children are alive. Clementine is testament to that. Fetal cardiac activity, yes. Fetal demise, not induced. She was alive. She was born.
Yeah.
She had rights, and they were forgotten. But Clementine is not forgotten. And with Clementine's law, she will be able to protect families, to protect women, and to protect babies long past me. I will fight for Clementine and I will fight for my family and I will try to help as many other families till the day that I die. But Clementine will continue to fight forever.
Wow. Clementine is almost very similar to the Justice for the Five Babies. Getting to see the images of those children really humanizes late-term abortions. And then getting to know Clementine's name also humanizes these children who are victims of fetal research. I'm curious if you can share, how did you come to pick the name Clementine?
So basically, Clementine's mother came up with Clementine's name, and we were like going back and forth for like a week or so,
Uh-huh.
just like teasing each other. We had agreed if our baby was a boy, we were going to name him Thomas. We went back and forth with names, and we settled on Clementine, and yeah, it's unique and it's beautiful.
Nothing more like her mom was craving clementines while pregnant.
At first, I was like, "Oh, like, what are we gonna nickname her?" You know what I mean? And she
Uh-huh.
was like, "We'll call her our little lemon." And I was like,
Uh-huh.
"Okay, I like it."
Very cute. Well, if you're willing, I'd love to pray us out
Yes,
to close our
absolutely.
time together. Okay. In the name of Father, Son, Holy Spirit, Amen. Dear Jesus, thank you for this day. Thank you for this time together. God, I give you praise and thanksgiving for Tommy. And thank you, Holy Spirit, for giving him the courage to speak out. Thank you for giving him the voice to speak, to protect his family, to protect Clementine. Thank you for the gift of Clementine's mom. Thank you for the gift of Clementine, God, and the life that she did have. Thank you, God, that justice will be yours, that victory is yours, God. I pray that Clementine's body will be recovered in whatever way, shape, or form, God, that you allow, that justice will be served for Clementine. I pray for the continued healing of Clementine's mom and Tommy, God, and I give you praise and thanks that they are using this story for your glory to save future children. I pray that Clementine's law will come to fruition, that we will see an end to fetal organ harvesting, that children will no longer be born alive, bought, and killed. So thank you, God, for the work that Tommy's doing. Please continue to bless his work. In Jesus' name, amen.
Thank you so, so much. I'm like
Yeah, thanks
so
for coming
happy
on.
we got to to speak. And I am so, so grateful for you and for your organization. Everything that you guys are doing is so amazing. And, like I said, I see you all over the place and you're doing activism with your baby too, which I think is so, so amazing. Got to start them young.
Yeah.
It's definitely not unnoticed. And I just hope that other people are inspired by everything that you and your team are doing. I really hope that more people tune in to this podcast and get educated on fetal organ harvesting and everything. And, like I said, I'm really grateful for you and your team. And I'm just happy that I got to speak about Clementine and how we're trying to save her.
Thank you so much. So tell the people, if you've made it this far, where can people find you? How can people follow along with your
Absolutely.
pro-life work?
So you can follow me on Instagram at Clementine's Voice. And we do have a 501c3 now. We are a non,
Yay! That's awesome.
it's Clementine's Voice work. The website is in the works. We are
Great.
defending the voiceless, the vulnerable, and the forgotten. And yeah, from pro-life activism to even protecting animals and all walks of life, we just want to be there to just help all life. Right now, the main objective is saving Clementine. And
Yeah.
then when we can save Clementine, I just want Clementine's voice to just continue to make a difference and continue to help life. We have a region, we have a Clementine's Voice New Jersey, and we have a Clementine's Voice Florida to try to get more people in New Jersey involved, to try to get more people in Florida, to expand, to again try to make a difference in different communities where abortion is rampant. I'm from New Jersey originally, and
Hmm.
I miss the food, but the laws there are pretty bad. Hoping that we can get people together. We're trying to just get more people involved. Just one more little thing, I'll say this. So,
Hmm.
another idea that I have for Clementine is Clementine's garden. So, when we find Clementine,
Hmm.
I would absolutely love for her resting place to not only be for her, but for her and all of the other children that were lost by
Oh,
abortion. So,
chills.
if we could have Clementine's Garden be just a large park, I want it to be here in Florida, where we're in a tropical region. And for all of the places that I would have taken Clementine, I would have traveled with her. I want to bring all of those places to her resting place. I want it to be just beautiful and filled with life. I want it to be just bursting with colors so that she could see it from heaven. And I want it to be a shared space for other families as well, post-abortive parents. I want to have just trails throughout the park with benches, and perhaps we can have little plaques on the benches with families' names and a quote so that they can sit and just pay respect to their family. I want to have sculptures throughout the park, whether it be activists or historical leaders or just pieces of
Wow.
art, whether it be sculptures of babies through fetal development, like in Saudi Arabia, there's a hospital that has beautiful, beautiful sculptures of the stages of development. So I want it to be a beautiful place. I want it to be a place for life, for knowledge, and for peace. I want normal families to be able to come to the park as well as just an educational learning park. All the different plants from all of the different parts of the world. I want to have little plaques to just educate people and to get people involved from outside of the pro-life movement to bring them to a space where it's also a space of respect and just remembrance for all of the preborn babies uh, that have been lost. So that's another idea. Now, you could correct me if I'm wrong, and I would love
Okay.
to have this as well. I think it's an amazing idea, and I think it's your idea. Are you the one that had brought up the pro-life museum?
I don't, maybe I heard that from someone else, but yeah, I've been
I've
saying we are gonna get our National Museum of Pro-Life History. It's
Yes.
going to happen.
I think that that is such an amazing idea. And if we could have something like that at Clementine's Garden, I think that that would be so,
Oh
so
my
cool. So this is again something that I want her resting place to be beautiful. And I always want my daughter to make a difference in this life. And I think that Clementine's Garden will be a beautiful place for her and for other families as well. And, whether it's, people learning about plants and, viewing art, maybe we can have a pro-life museum as well. But I have a lot of ideas for Clementine, a lot of really, really beautiful ideas for Clementine. I would love to have Clementine's home, which would be housing for mothers. I was thinking maybe like
Beautiful.
tiny houses or something, or Clementine's rescue for rescued animals, whether they're exotic or domestic or what have you.
Hmm.
But I have a lot of ideas for her, and I always want her to be remembered as not a victim and not an experiment, but I
Hmm.
want her to always be beautiful. The same beautiful baby that I got to love for 5 months, and the same beautiful baby that I'll love for the rest of my life. I want other people to love her too.
Hmm. Wow. That's such a beautiful vision. I was gonna say, we're gonna get Clementine's Garden and we're gonna get the National Museum of Pro-Life History. And wow, wouldn't that be beautiful if we could have them at the same spot? Please, God, it is going to happen in Jesus' name. We're gonna get our museum, we're gonna get Clementine's Garden. Wow, that vision you painted is so beautiful. I'm looking forward to that day. And truly, Clementine's memory will live on. Well, thank you so much, Tommy. And thank you, everyone, for listening to the Harvesting Justice podcast, a Pro Life San Francisco production. And we'll see you in the next one. Bye.